Hi, so let me tell you a story about one word, just two letters, NO. And this isn't some story from a faraway country. It happened right here in America, inside one of the most trusted hospitals in the world. And the kind of hospitals people fly across the world just to get treated at. So let's start with the story. So there was a surgeon, a well-known surgeon at John Hopkins. And one day he was asked to give a talk to other doctors there. Before he could speak, he had to fill out a simple form. And this form is normal. Every speaker fills it out. It just asks you to confirm that what you are about to say as a doctor or as a speaker is based on ideas that doctors already accept as true. So he reads the form, he reads it carefully, and he ticks the no. Not because he was going to say anything crazy. He said no because he didn't want to promise before even opening his mouth that everything he believed was already approved, at least by everyone else. So he wanted to speak honestly, even if some of his ideas were still new or still being debated. And within hours, people from the office in charge of that form reached out to him. They asked him, "Are you sure about your commitment? Did you make any mistake? Please explain your answer," and so many questions. And he didn't apologize for what he decided, and he gave his talk anyway. Nothing bad happened to him in the end of the day, but think about it. A grown man, a respected doctor, had to explain himself for simply refusing to say, "Everything I know is already fully settled." That tells you something is a little broken in the system and in how we treat doubt in medicine, even in a country that prides itself on having the best hospitals on the earth. And this is where the next story gets bigger. So you see, getting research funded and published in America is not as open as people think. A small group of people usually decide what research is worth doing and what gets printed in medical journals. Big research funding, the kind that comes from taxpayers, often goes to studies that support the older ideas rather than the new. And the new ideas are usually the risky ones. One time, a big breakthrough was announced at a major cancer conference. A big breakthrough. And that big breakthrough was that it was a drug that helped people with a deadly brain cancer live only a few months longer. Not cured, just a few months longer. And that was treated like a massive win. Now here's where it gets a bit serious. So in year 2023, some of the biggest and the most trusted medical groups in the country supported the government having more power to control what doctors can say in public. The idea was to stop misinformation. Sounds reasonable, but think about how easily that idea can be twisted. For example, a doctor who refuses to prescribe antibiotic for a common cold because the antibiotics simply don't work on a virus could still be labeled as spreading misinformation by a frustrated patient, even though the doctor is completely right. So one state actually passed a law like this in California in year 2022. A doctor could lose their entire medical license for disagreeing with the state's official health board on certain topics. Not for harming a patient, not for having a different opinion, just for denying the fact. Now hold on to that thought, because here comes the twist that makes this whole thing almost hard to believe. Around the same time, 2023, some of the very research that doctors were being told that they must agree with turned out to be fake. In year 2024, Dana-Farber Cancer Institute and Brigham and Women's Hospital, two of the most respected cancer research centers in the country in United States, had to take back 6 of their published studies and correct 31 more. The reason? The data was fake or seriously flawed. 29 people were involved in this. including the institute's own CEO. Yes, you heard it right, including the institute's own CEO. Now, one of the researchers involved in this scam said something shocking during the investigation. He said that he wished he had a better version of photo editing software, not because he regretted cheating. He regretted that his cheating was not good enough to avoid getting caught. At Brigham and Women's, a senior neurosurgeon researcher, the department's vice chair of research, was found to have faked data and copied images across 21 different published papers. And this is not a brand new problem either way. Years before all this, a hospital was fined 10 million US dollars after investigators found that they had faked information just to get NIH funding. And it kept happening. In year 2023 alone, medical journals across the country had to pull back over 10,000 articles. 10,000 articles at the same year in 2023. And the same year, the president of Stanford University stepped down, and the dean of Weill Cornell Medical School also resigned, both after their own research came under the question. One of those flagged studies done with Weill Cornell and Brigham and Women's had already been referred to a reference to other scientists over 170 times before anyone even noticed something was wrong. Moving on, one journal editor looked closely at 500 clinical trials. Almost half of them had false data in them. So just imagine, under a law like California's, a doctor who doubted one of these fake studies before anyone else caught the fraud could have lost their entire license for doubting it. But a doctor simply trusted the fake study and repeated it to the patient would have faced no punishment at all until the truth came out. Now, here's the part of the story that gives you and me a little hope. So there's an Oxford researcher named Dr. Tom Jefferson. He decided to actually check the real data behind very expensive flu medicine called Tamiflu that governments around the world, including the US and many other countries, and they had spent billions of dollars stockpiling since 2002. He discovered that drug barely worked at all. And get this, even some of the original researchers who wrote about the drug had never actually seen the real patient data themselves. Then there's Dr. Elizabeth Beck, a microbiologist who studies humans' bodies, tiny microbes. So she started noticing something strange in published lab photos. Some looked too perfect, almost edited. And she ended up checking 20,000 research papers and found signs of manipulation in about 1 out of every 25 of them. Some of those fake studies had already received big NIH research grants paid for by regular taxpayers. So she is now using artificial intelligence to help catch more of these fake images. Next, even the co-founder of Retraction Watch, a well-known website that tracks retracted research, has said something simple but powerful. He said that peer review, the process everyone assumes makes research trustworthy, was never really a gold standard people think it is. Institutions just want us to believe that it is trustworthy. Now, let's talk about what happens to people in America who speaks up, or doctors who speak up. So there was a Baltimore health official and someone who fully supported strict COVID rules, who once gently suggested that maybe it was time to move towards people using their own common sense instead of strict blanket rules for everyone. Because of that one opinion, over 600 public health experts signed a letter demanding she be removed from a conference. And here's the strange part. The conference panel she was removed from was actually about bullying and harassment in the medical field. So she was bullied out of a panel about bullying. And at the same time, a well-known doctor, someone who had just been elected to National Academy of Medicine, was blocked from attending a major research conference. Why? Because he had only received 2 vaccine doses instead of 3 the conference required. And separately, research showing that people who recovered from COVID naturally still had strong immunity and was quietly removed from social media for a while. Yes, and later that same research became the third most discussed medical study, we all know, third most discussed medical study by JAMA that published the entire year. A leader of a well-known surgical group was publicly criticized by his own organization for simply sharing a personal opinion on affirmative actions in surgery. There's another story that a cardiologist at the University of Pittsburgh lost his leadership position after asking an uncomfortable question. Different topics, same pattern again and again, all in a country that tells its people it has the most advanced medical system in the world. So here what I want you to take away from all of this, especially all young doctors, that free speech was never meant to protect easy opinions. Nobody needs protection from agreeing with the crowd. It exists to protect the person who raises their hand and says, wait, I'm not sure that's actually right, especially when everyone else in the room really wants them to just stay quiet. So good research and good science have saved millions of lives, and we have come across it. That part is real and important, but research only stays honest and useful when people are still allowed to question it, and question it openly without losing their jobs or their license for simply doubting something. So next time a doctor tells you something that sounds like it came straight from an old textbook, ask yourself, is this really based on a strong current evidence, or is it just something nobody has been brave enough to question yet? Because the best doctors were never trained to follow rules blindly. And this is what I always say. The best doctors were never trained to follow rules blindly. They were trained for years to think for themselves. And sometimes thinking for yourself looks exactly like quietly checking a box that says no. A lot of research and stories that shaped this video came together for me while reading Dr. Marty Makary's book, Blind Spots. And this got you thinking that book is worth picking up.